Everyone online says you need to scale with a course. And I say, sell the damn service. I'm Emylee Williams, award-winning consultant and Productize offer expert since 2014. And I'm here to help you work less, make more, and stop custom building your burnout. Each week, we talk strategy, structure, and the real stories behind sustainable service businesses. You know, from service providers who like doing service work, who want to stay in service work, but also just make more money. If you're ready for all that yapping, then let's dive in. I posted on Threads a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to circle back on something because I posted about how a friend of mine was having their birthday party, and the invitation was something like, "You're invited to the slideshow birthday party." And I said, "What is that?" And it's basically where it's totally optional, but if you wanted to make a slideshow presentation about a topic and get up in front of the group of folks and present on your topic, then you could. They were really like limiting it to, just keep it to 3 to 5 slides, keep it to 5 to 7 minutes. We don't want to be here all day. And we would love to hear about whatever it is that you find interesting. And if you know me at all, you know that I have a lot of niche interest. And whenever anyone wants to talk about those niche interests, I cannot shut up. And I was immediately in and I said, I will be there. I'm going to make a slideshow and I can't decide which topic I'm going to do. So I'm going to do 4 topics. And so I shared the title slide of my presentation on Threads. And my title slide was syrups, sewer cats, side projects, and serial killers. And I had one slide for each plus 3 slides that showed people the side projects I was working on, my sewer cat, who is my biological son, and coffee syrups that I've made and how I've introduced them in and made them drinks. And then I talked about my theory of why I think we will see an uptick in serial killing in the next generation. Now, my friend recorded that. A bunch of you asked for it to be recorded and broadcasted, and I haven't put it anywhere. If this is a real interest and you all want it, maybe I should just put it up on YouTube. I'm trying to think of just like the low effort, low lift way for me to get it up. It is almost 10 minutes long. I definitely went over. And I talked really fast and I was nervous. I had a glass of wine and a half in me to get up there in front of everyone, but I did it and it's really funny. And so I guess if you have any better idea than putting it up on YouTube, which also just feels very big, let me know what your idea is. And if you want to watch it, I would love for you to be able to watch it. So there's that caveat. Now, I want to keep talking about Threads today because there was an interesting post that popped up a couple of days ago, if not just yesterday, from an account. I don't even follow this account yet. They just popped up in my feed because their thread kind of went mini viral it was yesterday, one day ago. At the time of me kind of scrolling through these comments, they have 205 comments on their thread, and that is abnormal for this person's account. And I wanted to talk about the thread here, and I wanted to talk about the conversations that are happening in the comments of this thread and how some other people are referencing this thread on their own feed and in their own post, because it ties back, a surprise, surprise, to productization and service work. So the initial thread, which I was actually tagged in, this is how I saw it. A friend of mine tagged me in this post, so thank you, Marissa. But an account by the name of Maker and Moxie posted one day ago, "Hi, can we bring back DFY services, please?" So DFY stands for Done For You Services. "Sincerely, a girly who does not want to learn to do everything herself and in fact wants to hire experts to do it for her." Okay. This thread has 205 comments. Now, my friend Marissa Lawton at Hey Marissa Lawton commented and tagged me and said, "Emylee is on a mission here." And so I replied, and now I get to see all the posts. And I want to talk about some of the conversation, the kind of micro conversations that are happening within this thread and then outside of this thread. So, of course, there is the typical, like, yes, I have done for you services, go check them out. People kind of, subtly, not so subtly because they're linking their website or inquiry form in the comments, even though she wasn't looking specifically to hire anyone specifically. It was just more the conversation. But, we have those folks who are like, yes, I offer done for you services and here's my website. Then there's, some conversations from done for you service providers who've been in the space and have been offering done for you services like, hey, we haven't gone anywhere. People just aren't hiring us. Or um, we've been kind of overlooked because of the DIY market. And that I want to dig into a little bit. There's also some people who are agreeing, like, yes, please, I want to hire this kind of person. I'm looking for this one. And so some version of the conversation that's happening there, we've talked about on the show already. Like I'm reading one right now by Kristen Unfiltered, and she said, like, please, literally wanted a brand shoot, but I would now have to pick my own photos to be edited. I'm sorry, what? LOL, why would I do that when you're the professional and I'm paying you to capture my best angles? This is exactly proving my point that I talked about earlier in a different episode where I gave a hypothetical example of a stylist. And I said, your clients are hiring you to be the expert. And so if you're coming in and saying, asking too much for their feedback and asking them to make the decision, there can be a disconnect. And what was interesting is that specific conversation was purely hypothetical. I was thinking of an example on the fly. But what was funny is that a previous client and friend of mine who I've known for a long time in this industry messaged me on Instagram who is a stylist. And she said, "Hey, I listened to that episode. Can I ask you a question about that? How would that look for me? Because my clients, I would fear that I would be throwing away a piece of sentimental clothing or something that they did want to keep, that they had attachment to. And so I do get their buy-in and they are part of the conversation when I'm going through their clothes. How would this apply to me?" And so I brainstormed with her a little bit and I suggested that potentially adding something in the onboarding form and asking a kind of getting a temperature pulse from your client and giving them 3 to 5 options of examples of how much decision factor that they could play into this working relationship with you. Maybe they want to be someone who would be more like me, and I don't have a sentimental value to a single stitch of clothing in my closet. And I would want you to make the decision about everything. For me, not that I don't have sentimental value over the things, I just prioritize not having to make decisions about it over keeping something that I might overthink. I overthink a lot. And so for me, the having someone else come in and make the decision for me is a big part of the process. Now, this is obviously in terms of styling clothes for a personal use. I know that a lot of done for you service providers have an issue with their clients relying them a little bit too much on them making the decision when the client does need to make kind of the executive decision. And that is definitely a subset of this conversation where maybe there's more like not necessarily strategy, but decisions, ultimate decisions that need to be made from the business owner. And when you, as the business owner, take too long to make that decision or are your own bottleneck, that can be very frustrating for done for you service providers who are waiting on you in order to move forward. Now, how I look at that specifically, and this conversation, just as a heads up, is going to have so many spokes of the wheel of this conversation because it's going to inspire a nuance, right? And so just be here with me, okay? So when that happens, if a done for you provider is saying, my clients have to make the decision, they are the bottleneck. As the service provider, as the person creating this experience, it is your responsibility to analyze why they might be getting stuck. Do they need to be educated about something? Are they ill-informed about how to make that decision? Is the system of them making the decision and communicating that decision easy for them to follow and to do? Is the deadline of when they need to make the decision, is why the impact of them making the decision sooner rather than later being communicated? There is so much responsibility on the service provider to inform, right? That's what I mean when I say you are the expert. It's not just I'm saying you're the expert, you need to make every single decision without their input. I'm saying it's your job to inform the experience and the facilitation of that relationship. And if you need them to make a decision and you need them to do it quickly, then you need to equip them in order to support them in doing that, right? And so that's my kind of caveat to that. Now, back to the onboarding form, I said creating this rating scale because I'm someone who I would want you to make all the decisions. So having something on there like, I'm not sentimentally attached to anything in my closet. You can make every executive decision. And I want to come into this relationship when you've got my kind of first draft ready for my approval. You know what I mean? Like filter through all the things and then let me look at it. And then going all the way up to the top of saying, no, I'm really connected to the pieces in my closet and I want to work with you every step of the way in order to, facilitate the end result. And of course, some options in between. And I said that way, when someone fills out the onboarding form, you know what kind of client they're going to be. So you know how to show up for them. And that also enables you to work with a variety of type of people and type of clients. Every single one of those clients is wanting the same result. They want a wardrobe that they feel confident about or beautiful in, or that feels easy to select outfits for the day, or whatever it is, right? Whatever the end result that your clients are wanting, they all want that result. What I'm talking about is what is the experience like in getting that result, and what of your process of how you show up do you feel excited about and have the bandwidth to customize for that client. And I know customize feels like a really big, oh my gosh, everything is going to be so custom. I'm literally saying customize how you show up for that client, how you help them make the decisions, what decisions you make for them, where you loop them in, right? Each and every one of us can have that as part of our process. Now, going back to the example as a photographer, when she, wanted a brand shoot and she would now have to pick her own photos, that certainly from the photographer should have been communicated as part of their process. Maybe the photographer has gotten burned so many times previously where the client didn't like the photos that the photographer selected and asked them to go cull more images, and it just created maybe a stickiness in their process. To me, every time we have like a really polarizing way, and not that that's necessarily polarizing, but a really unique way of delivering our service, it's typically stems from a point where that provider got burnt, right? I no longer do it this way because of some scenario that happened before. So I would be curious about that to hear from the photographer side. But what's interesting is I do think that should have been communicated beforehand. So if you're the photographer who says, I'm going to take the photos and then you get to select, X amount out of the total for me to edit. I understand as a previous photographer how that can feel like you're empowering your client, right? Maybe you charge per edit. Maybe you shoot 500 images and they get 50, right? And you really want to make sure that they're selecting the ones that they want so that you spend the appropriate amount of time on those edits. Maybe your edits are really, really labor intensive and you only want to edit the ones that you know that they're going to love. I understand why a photographer would have that in their process. I also understand how someone who has hired photographers before, how I would absolutely hate that. Again, someone who does not want to make decisions and is going to overthink. Now, for me, as the type of consumer that I am, if we introduce too many pieces of this experience where I am having to make more decisions, at the end of our working relationship, I am going to doubt the effectiveness of our project because I was too much a part of it. I wanted to rely on you and your expertise to guide that. And if I'm having to make a lot of decisions that I feel like are very important in that project, I might not trust my decisions and I trust yours more in that arena, right? So that's something to consider. I do think the sometimes sacrifice that some of us make when we work with done for you providers where we feel like maybe they're not doing enough or they're not making enough decisions for us or whatever it might be, Also needs to be coupled with a conversation about how much did you spend. That is another huge part of this thread that I am seeing where done for you providers are saying, literally the comment right after the brand one from I am LTJ underscore I am LTJ. She says, I'm a done for you girl, but I do have DIY and done with you for those who are not ready for the investment. And there's other conversations in here where people are saying, yes, I have them. People just don't typically can't afford them, or yes, I have them, but you all need to start budgeting for them. And that's a very valid piece of this conversation. And I think honestly, that is one of the overarching threads for why I think this thread went kind of mini viral and why a lot of people are talking about it. Done for you services have obviously existed for a very long time, and people have charged a variety of rates for a variety of those services, right? And then, 2013, 2014, 2015, DIY and courses really took off. That was like the explosion of that era, okay? And since then, there have been the kind of hybrid of done with you, done for you courses, programs, DIY, and everything in between. And I think that with DIY courses innately being lower priced than done for you services, there has been a misconception in the market about what an equitable price point for done for you service should be. I know for a fact, because I've heard people say it, sentences like, why would I pay X if I could just learn how to do it myself for Y? And it's that right there that is the crux of this conversation. Because learning to do it yourself is not the same as someone coming in and doing it for you. Again, there are different times when you can prioritize one over the other, right? If it is a skill set that you want to learn in your business, that you want to implement yourself and you want to have more creative control over, absolutely, I can see where you're going to value the DIY and learning it and getting your hands dirty, right? If you don't want to learn that thing and you have no desire to learn that thing, and you instead want the thing to be done really well, then you hire an expert to do that for you. Those are different results for different priorities for a different outcome. The DIY version, yes, might be learning it, but you're also going to have a slower implementation success rate, right? You're going to implement the thing slower because you need to learn it first. And you're going to see high success later than if you hired the expert, because here again, it's the age-old saying of like, you're not paying me $10,000 to create your logo. You're paying me $10,000 to utilize 20 years of experience and a design degree and technical skills and software subscriptions and right, in order to create the end result. And that's the difference, right? You are learning from someone who has all of those skills in a DIY scenario, but you're using your assets, your skills, your experience to create the result. When you hire someone, you're using theirs, and theirs hopefully comes at a higher level of experience than you, right? I personally do not want to learn how to do my own bookkeeping. I want to hire a bookkeeper. I don't want my bookkeeper to ask me, how should this be, I don't know, organized, classified, whatever. Obviously, there are different nuances to that. And there are questions of like, I literally don't know what this purchase is. That's not what I'm talking about. But like the strategy of bookkeeping, right? Those are different conversations. Okay. I don't want to take a bookkeeping course, learn how to do it, and then do it for myself. That I have no desire to do that. I'm going to hire someone. So therefore, they're taking something off my plate. They're doing it in their expert way. They're protecting me, right? There are a lot of nuances that come with bookkeeping. So I'm going to pay an equitable rate for that. All right. So what I found interesting in the kind of the threads that came off of this thread, so threads from other people about this thread. One, I found it really funny that the same day and later that day, I saw multiple people basically say her thread, but in they rewrote it and they didn't tag her, which I found interesting. Like I saw so many of like, where are the done for you providers at? Can we bring done for you services back? Like literally same day. Um, so that was just funny and annoying. There were lots of people who were commenting about like, yep, still here doing done for you 7 years later. It never left. It's still here. Some people saying, yes, that's why I'm introducing done for you content into our offer later this year or next year. And so that part I found really interesting because, anytime I can bring people to the done for you side, I am going to. But the spokes of the threads that came off of this one were from people who have probably started as done for you service providers and have pivoted to either a done with you or a DIY. Like a group container, a cohort, so to speak, right? And they don't offer done for you anymore. Or if they do, it is like premium, premium, premium because they don't have the bandwidth, right? And some of those folks are commenting saying like, someone was like, do you offer done for you services? Someone says, bring back done for you service. And they said, no, just no. um, don't have the bandwidth, don't have the time, don't have the desire, all of the things. And again, the nuance behind that I'm seeing is, especially if they've offered done for you services before, that they probably got burnt out on done for you services. They probably weren't making the amount of revenue that they wanted. They were over capacity. They had a hard time finding clients, keeping clients, or at overcapacity. Maybe they had too many clients and they couldn't manage, the juggling of it all. And that's okay. It's okay to know that about yourself and pivot your business. 100%, everyone gets to do what they want to do in this industry, right? And the reason why this podcast exists is if you are a service provider who finds yourself at that point and you're thinking about, not even you're thinking about pivoting, you're thinking that pivoting is your only option to get out of the overwhelm, the burnout, the selling, the whatever, right? Whatever part of it you hate most. If that is your reason for entertaining pivoting, I am just wanting to introduce an alternative, and that is productization. I know for a fact that if more service providers, done for you service providers, could introduce productization into their customer journey, their client experience, their onboarding, their delivery, their scope, their assets, their re-signing, their reactivation, their re-engagement, then they could have a completely different relationship with their service, with their clients, with the results that they get. Productization is reshaping a very manual, custom, bespoke, done for you service, and it shapes that into a predictable, repeatable method of providing a result that is still done for you, right? It's utilizing workflows, systems, creating a method, right? Milestones, phases in order to have a succinct delivery of your service. And because I've been on both sides, I know that when you're in the space of being burnt out from service work, because I've been there, I've talked about it, and you think your only option is to leave that business model, what I don't think enough people think about in that transition or in that moment is the pros and cons of the other business models. And I wish that more people were able to pause and reflect on, what am I actually not liking about my work right now? No matter how you work with people, no matter your price point, no matter your result, no matter your delivery, what about what I'm doing right now, from everything, from top to bottom, from lead generation and selling, converting and onboarding, delivering and offboarding, all of it. What part of that do I not like the most? What part do I feel like is flashing red, right? Alert, alert. this is going to push you over the edge into overcapacity, burnout, stress, whatever, if we don't fix it. And what I would encourage you to do, and the work that I do with you inside of Sold Out Services, is analyzing those giant red sirens and taking your offer and deciding which is the one that is the best one to productize right now and first, and what from top to bottom of that product can actually be productized. So we look at what you're doing right now, how you're delivering, what the scope is, what the price point, what the result is, all of it. And we create the systems needed in order to buy back some of your time so that you can either say, fantastic, I can maintain the revenue I'm at right now, and I just save some time, so I'm feeling a whole heck of a lot less overwhelmed. And that enables me to, maybe I want to create content for the business just to create content. Maybe I want to pick up a side hobby, maybe whatever, right? Or you can pull the lever of, well, now that I've saved this time, I can bring on 1 or 2 or 3 more clients. And how much does that impact my revenue because of that? And the result that they're getting, and my experience in working with the clients, my overall happiness, and all of the things. I've said this phrase before, so you might have heard me say it, but I am a huge fan of what I call the gentle pivot. So where most people take their business and they are overwhelmed, they're burnt out, and they're done, and they flip it on its head and they do a 180 and they drastically change their offer, their price point, their audience, their delivery, right? All of it, and have to kind of rebuild. What I suggest is we take the core thing that's frustrating us. We identify, we do a post-mortem on all of those elements, and we do a gentle pivot. So it just shifts 15 degrees, truly, one way or the other. And then we do the work in order to make that shift happen. And then we exist in that 15-degree pivot, and we see how that feels. And if it's still showing us opportunities of either productization, streamlining, whatever, then we make those decisions when they come up. But so many of us are convinced that a 180 flip is what's going to get us what we want, when a 180 flip just resets us back to zero and introduces a whole new set of pros and cons. But a 15-degree gentle pivot, it's the same highway, just a different lane, right? And so in this season of ease and gentle business and streamlined offers and all of the things, that's what I want to introduce to you. And I encourage you, if you saw that thread or someone else's thread referencing the thread, and your knee-jerk reaction was to shit on done-for-you services, I really want you to reflect why and really, really understand what about done-for-you services triggers you. And you don't need to do anything about it if you don't want to. But I mean, and I've shared the story, but in freaking 2016, done-for-you service triggered me. And when I do the postmortem, I reflect back, and the piece that was triggering were client like revisions. I was a photographer, right? And I would submit photos and they would provide feedback. Can you edit this a little differently? Can you change this? Can you do that? Can we get another angle here? And that part stressed me out so much. So much, because I made it about me. I made it about my self-worth. I made it about how good I was as a photographer. I made it about how picky that client was or annoying they were or whatever. I did not take ownership and responsibility for looking at that and saying, where have I set the stage, set the tone for my client to come back for 17 revision requests? Where have I not communicated that that isn't how this is going to work? Right? Where is the responsibility and the ownership? If I had done that and actually identified and diagnosed the actual issue, I could have set up a system to fix that. I could better communicate in our contract how many revisions are allowed, and revisions past a certain point are an extra fee. If I was getting paid for the 17th revision, would I care as much? Probably not. Right? Change it in the contract, communicate with the client, create a communication system that walked clients through how to look at their images, how to make revision requests, how to not overthink about their images, right? All of that is on me. And all of that is the experience of working with me and the service that I could be providing. And that makes it a better service. And tweaking those changes could have, and most likely would have, impacted how I felt about client revision request. Would that have been enough for me to continue to grow and stay in love with my craft and service business? Maybe, maybe not. But I definitely think that those stopgaps are worth trying and talking out and implementing before we do a 180. And so if that is a conversation you want to talk about, and you are interested in learning about what are the other pillars of productization in a business, there are 6 in a done-for-you service business, by the way, and how productizing and really paying attention to those pillars allows you to provide better results, love your business again, love your service, love your clients, and really show up in your authority, your expertise, then I want you to save your free seat to my upcoming webinar. It's happening November 11th, 2025. It's called the Productization Framework. I'm going to walk you through the 6 pillars of productization and how to apply it to your service business, and how we can work together to analyze your current state of service business and productize what we can, systematize what we can, templatize what we can, so you can continue to show up in your customized genius where it makes sense. So you can just head to soldoutservices.com/webinar and save your free seat. Hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Sell the Damn Service. I'm really honored that you spent however many minutes you just did with me. Now, if you could go do me a very quick favor and be sure to like, subscribe, leave a rating and a review for this podcast over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or, pick your favorite platform. I'm not going to be that choosy. It truly means the world to me. It's how little tiny shows that are like mine, that are self-funded and, being edited in between dinner time and school pickup, it helps us get seen. It's free for you to do and takes just a couple of minutes. And I would love you forever if I could send you an edible arrangement as a big thank you. I would. So instead, consider this giant thank you directed just at you for going to do that. And share this episode or this podcast with a friend who needs to hear it. I love ranting and raving about service-based business strategies. And, I think more people should listen to this show, honestly. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I really am grateful that you're here, and we will chat very soon.